Hello everybody, my name is Matti Sulanto and in this video I'm reviewing this Lumix 10-25mm f1.7 zoom lens. But before I go any further, please consider subscribing to my channel and activate the bell so you'll get notified whenever I post a new video. And I usually post on Tuesdays and on Fridays. Oh yes, and one more thing. I'm a Lumix ambassador and this lens is on loan from Panasonic, but I'm not getting paid to make this video. I make all my videos only to share my experiences with you guys. Last Friday I already published my first impressions video, but in this video I'm gonna take a better look at this lens and how it performs optically, and after that I'm gonna talk about some of the options and how well this could replace some of the prime lenses. But now let's get started. So this is the Lumix 10-25mm f1.7 zoom lens. At the time of making this video, this is a unique product in the Micro Four Thirds lineup because of the focal length range and also because of the fast f1.7 maximum aperture. The first mock-up of this lens was seen at Photokina 2018, about a year ago, and the final products came out this summer, so now this is a few months old product. The mechanical construction of this lens seems top-notch. The exterior materials are a mixture of metal and plastic, mostly metal. The zoom ring is silky smooth and so is the focus ring that also has the manual focus clutch. The manual focus clutch can be very handy if you for some reason need to focus manually. Although I have to say that I usually use the switch on the back of my camera. If I need manual focus, I find this switch very nice to use, but nevertheless the manual focus clutch is still a good feature to have. And also this lens is weather sealed as a proper pro-grade glass should be. The aperture ring is interesting. The ring itself has no clicks or steps, but the aperture action is stepless only in video mode. If I turn my camera to any of the photo modes, P, A, S or M, the aperture action actually has third of a stop increments when I turn the ring, even though there are no clicks on the ring. But if I turn my camera to video mode, then I get virtually stepless aperture action also. But when I was taking photographs, I found it was more reassuring to turn the ring to A and use my camera's dial to select the aperture. That way I felt it was less likely to accidentally change the aperture in the heat of the moment. This lens weighs in at about 727 grams with the hood, which is included, and without the caps. And the filter size is 77 millimeters. So this can hardly be called a small or a compact lens, especially when we think about Micro Four Thirds. But despite of the size and the weight, it balances nicely on the G9 and also on the G90, which is a smaller camera body. But I wouldn't put this on something like the GX880, for example. It works, but the balance is not great, obviously. The optical construction is 17 elements in 12 groups, and that includes 3 aspherical elements, 4 extra low dispersion elements and 1 ultra-high refractive index element. So the optical construction is quite complex. The minimum focusing distance is 28 centimeters, which is not exactly a macro, but it allows you to get some really nice close-ups. There's no built-in stabilizer in this lens, and I think there are 2 reasons for that. The first is that it would make the optical construction even more complex than it already is. And the second reason is that pretty much all the latest Lumix cameras have a really powerful eyepiece that can easily take care of the stabilization when you consider that this focal length range covers from wide angle to a standard lens. What about the optical performance then? Well, it's awesome. This lens is really sharp even wide open. But it gets even better by stopping down a little bit to about f2.8 or so. And the sharpness holds up really well until about f5.6, after which the diffraction starts to soften the image. But even f8 or even f11 are usable, but I wouldn't use f11 unless I had a really good reason to do so. However, there's a minor problem at the wide end. The focus plane is not flat, it's slightly curved. And it can be a problem if you shoot something like a building straight on at the widest f1.7 aperture. You may not get sharp corners because the focus plane is slightly curved. So it makes sense to stop down a little bit so the depth of field covers the curvature of the focus plane. But in my opinion, if you're shooting architecture, landscapes or whatever similar subjects, it makes sense to stop down anyways, because you want to make sure that the depth of field covers all the important things in the picture. And if you're shooting wide open, make sure to move the focus point over the main subject in your frame to make sure you get the sharpness there. And by the way, the curved focus plane is quite a common problem with wide-angle lenses, so it's nothing special or nothing unique with this particular lens. The weather over here in Finland has been quite unpredictable, cloudy and rainy lately because it's the fall after all. And I even went to Sweden, but it was no better over there. However, I managed to point this into the sun a couple of times, and based on that, I'd say this lens is not very sensitive to backlight. But of course you can get some flare in your shot if you really try. The autofocus is blazingly fast and very accurate. There's nothing much more to say about that really. The vignetting, chromatic aberrations and distortions are corrected in camera for JPEGs, and many RAW developers or some RAW developers also apply the corrections automatically. So in most cases there are nothing to worry about. Electronic or in-camera corrections are becoming popular in mirrorless cameras, and as long as they don't visibly degrade the image quality, I think they are just as fine. I'm only interested in the end result. My conclusion with this lens is that it's really awesome zoom lens. The build quality is good or very good, and it's weather sealed, and the focal length range is very practical, and also the fast constant maximum aperture is a major upside. And the only real downside I can figure out is the size and the weight. And of course also maybe the price. This goes for about 1,800 euros or US dollars, and that's a lot of money. So this is a very nice zoom lens, but can it sensibly replace 3 or 4 prime lenses in the same focal length range? And from the optical standpoint, I would say yes, absolutely. This can replace any lens in the same focal length range, no problem. But if you occasionally need a small and compact setup, you're going to need at least one prime in addition to this. Because say you need only 14mm lens, you can't leave parts of this zoom at home as you can with the primes. You can only take that 14mm small prime and put it on your camera and go out and make your pictures. But with this zoom lens, you have to take everything with you all the time or every time you go out. But if you're carrying all of your prime lenses with you all the time anyway, then this zoom lens could make a lot of sense for you. And this would also make a lot of sense for video shooters, because you get the same exact color balance at all focal lengths, you get the same f-stop or the same t-stop at all focal lengths, and of course you can reframe your shot very easily because this is a zoom lens. So what about the alternatives then? One obvious alternative or option is of course the Sigma 18 to 35mm f1.8. That lens with some sort of speed booster type of adapter would give you one extra stop of light compared to this one. But the Micro Four Thirds equivalent zoom range is only from about 14 to about 27mm. So this Lumix 10 to 25 is a lot wider. I have not used the Metabones speed booster, which is supposed to be very good, but I have used the Viltrox speed booster and I did not like it. I think the autofocus performance was very unpredictable, and I was also not convinced about the optical performance. And that Sigma on its own is a very nice optics. If you mount it on any APS-C camera without any adapters, you will get really nice sharp results. And I would hate to degrade that nice performance by adding an adapter between the lens and the camera. I'm not a big fan of these speed booster type of adapters that add lens elements between the camera lens and the sensor, because those extra lens elements can only make the performance worse, not better. And I guess you could also consider the Lumix 12 to 35mm f2.8 and the Olympus Zuiko 12 to 40mm f2.8 as alternatives to this one. Both of those have considerably slower maximum aperture, but they're also a lot smaller and a lot cheaper than this one. I really enjoy using this lens. However, this will not replace my small and compact primes, because sometimes I want to have that small prime lens on my camera when I go out and do some street photography, for example. However, I think I'm gonna use this lens a lot for my videos in the future. I hope you liked this video, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.